to In the News. I am Brett Burney from Apps and Law.
And this is Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD.
Jeff, we have a special guest today.
Woohoo!
We don't normally do this, but one of us, I shall not remain nameless. It'll be me. I'm going to be on vacation, and so we like to record some additional sessions to play while we're not able to do things live every Friday. And this time, we just had a great idea that we wanted to invite a friend of the show, and personally a good friend, to just talk about some technology things that he sees going on. This is Steve Embry, who has been practicing law for many, many years. I think Steve, it was over 30 something years, right?
Something like that.
Somewhere around there. That's where I first met Steve. He was a litigator at Frost Brown Todd, right? Or I don't know what they call it now. That's just the way that I remember the firm. I would run into you through the American Bar Association and tech shows, Steve. You have retired from practice, but you are I think you're more busy than I remember you ever being, because you now author Tech Law Crossroads. This is a blog, so I'm showing this right now, which I've always enjoyed following you on. And you also write for Above the Law. .com, which is a blog that's been around for a very long time, and you have been writing some technology focused pieces. And so again, I've worked with Steve on several different projects, again from the ABA, talking with him through the technology conferences, the ABA Tech Show that Jeff and I also are involved in. And that's just like maybe one or two things, Steve, that I know that you're involved in. There's many other things, but knowing Steve as I do, he is also a technology nerd, fellow nerdhead. And it's always fun to talk with him, not just specifically about like, hey, that's the new Apple Watch. Or, I mean, if you can see, we're going to get into this. He's wearing like the Meta glasses right now as he's talking with us, which is amazing. But we also love to geek out on some of the things. So it's not just that, but Steve also does a lot of in-depth articles and coverage about how AI is being used today, more specifically in the practice of law or in the legal sphere, which is not just for lawyers. It's really, as applies to everything. We were just talking about an article that you wrote about arbitration and how dispute resolution with using AI tools are being used from their perspective, which is also interesting. So anyway, that's probably enough on the about of, but we'll get into some more details, Steve. But welcome. We are thrilled for you to join with us today. And we just wanted to kind of have a little general conversation about some of the technology you're using, some of the technology trends that you're seeing, and where it's going to go. Sure, as somebody that's using it in all that you're doing. So welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. As I've told you, Brett, and probably you too, Jeff, this is one of my favorite podcasts. I have a list of podcasts that every week I try to listen to. I always get to this one first. And often this is the only one I get to because of what I'm doing. And sometimes I actually get tired and don't listen at all, but I always listen to this one. So kudos to you guys.
That's so nice. Thank you.
Steve, tell us a little bit about the technology that you're using day to day right now, your phone, your computer. What are the main things you're using?
Yeah, so I use the iPad Pro. I'm not using it as much as I used to. I think maybe I told this story to you, Brett. I was at an Apple conference,
MacStock. You were at MacStock, right? Yeah,
back in
you
the
wrote
summer,
about that.
And I got there, and for some reason I had left my iPad and my laptop at home. So I immediately had to go out and get an Uber to the local Best Buy, and I bought a 13-inch MacBook Air, thinking I would use it during the conference. When the conference was done, I'd return it, and that'd be that. Well, I liked it so much that it has been my go-to device, even above the iPad, for everything. And I'm doing this right now. It's light, it's dependable. A lot of the articles that I write, they just flow better or work better on a laptop as opposed to the iPad, particularly like with the Tech Law Crossroads, which is on a WordPress platform, Kevin O'Keefe's platform, as you know. And sometimes the iPad just doesn't play nice with it, and so that it just works better with this. So I've been using this pretty much exclusively. I had a MacBook Pro, and I
Okay.
thought that's what I thought I would just keep and send this one back, but I like this one so well. I said, "Come sell the MacBook Pro and just keep this one." And it was bigger too. So for me and my sort of lifestyle, the smaller version of the MacBook is actually better. So
And what
that
are you using for a smartphone nowadays?
Apple, the iPhone, the latest iPhone. And in fact, I was get it out here.
You
I
got the Pro. I think you're a
got the
Pro model,
Pro,
right?
and I've got
Okay.
the orange,
Yes.
Ah,
right?
17
Yes.
Pro.
Obnoxious orange
Oh,
model.
dude. Well,
Oh, you did too.
it's the pumpkin spice caramel
Right.
latte
Yeah.
version there.
And I don't know what you found, Brett and Jeff, but of course I do this every year because I sort of, well, my rationale or excuse, depending on who you ask, is, I have to keep abreast of technology, so I should get a new iPhone every year or something.
Absolutely. That's a good reason
Yeah,
to
anyway,
upgrade that.
that's what I tell myself. But I was frankly shocked at how much better the camera and cameras were on this new iPhone than they were before. I was not
Yeah.
expecting that. I mean, they really are. It's really quite an improvement. And some of the features, like the selfie landscape features, that I think you got
Yeah.
recently, is that's really cool. And so yeah, that's what I use uh, an iPhone. I also have I guess I shouldn't confess this, but I will also have a Samsung Galaxy Android phone. And the main reason I do that is, I wanted to, well, two reasons. One, I wanted to have a different like phone and phone number I could give out to vendors, which I know I could use without buying another phone. But one of the features on the Galaxy is it's got a recording transcription a tool built in, and it's actually better. I was using Whisper, but I think this feature is actually better, and so
Oh,
I
interesting.
converted to that. Yeah, I've had some glitches with Whisper from time to time. So yeah, that's I have two phones. I won't tell
As
you about
much
the
as I
iPads.
run into you, Steve, I don't know that I've ever seen you pick up the other phone. Like I always see you with an iPhone,
Yeah.
but it is good. Like you say, you're using it for like a separate phone number, and it does keep it separate, which is a good thing too.
And I think there's some value, and maybe this is an excuse more than a rationale. There's some value to being at least acquainted with the Android system to sort of
Yeah.
know how it works, because a lot of
Absolutely.
people use
Yeah.
Androids, and I'll get questions from time to time. How do I do this on a phone? And I'll say, well, on the Apple phone, well, I don't have an Apple phone. I have an Android. So, okay, well, it's a little bit different, and it takes a little getting used to, but it'll do this and it'll do that. And
So just to wrap up the technology that you're using, I have to ask about the technology you're wearing because, as Brett alluded to
Yeah,
before, you are wearing the Meta Ray-Bans,
I
and
am.
I'm curious. Tell me a little bit. How long have you had them? What are you using them for? What do you like? What do you dislike?
Yeah, I've had them for about a week or
Oh,
so,
brand new. Okay.
and
wow.
this is the first generation, and if I went back and revisited, I might, get maybe the second generation or even the latest one, which has got the text capability on it, which I'm really not sure about. I want to see a text like running across the screen while I'm talking to somebody, but it's it's got a camera. You can touch the top and it'll take a picture. Hold it down, it'll take a video. The speakers and microphone are actually in the glasses, so you're hearing me and I'm hearing you sort of by my ears. Um, but the cool thing that it does, it's got an AI feature that is actually pretty good. You could ask it various questions. It'll respond. You can ask it orally. You don't have to pick up your phone to do it. And I think that when we were talking beforehand, I gave the example when I was in Boston last week. I was looking out the window at the river and sort of the downtown scene. So I asked the tool, "What am I looking at?" And it said, "Well, you're looking at a river and there's some skyscrapers and some businesses." Okay, that's fine. It can see that. Then I asked, well, where am I? And it said, you were in Boston, Massachusetts, USA. And to me, that was kind of impressive that it could figure
Whoa.
where I was. I don't know whether it did that through just, location systems or comparing what I was seeing, but you can look at various objects and say, what is this? Like a water bottle or, a magazine, and it'll tell you, which is kind of cool. And it'll also read texts to you. It'll say, you got a text from so and so. and it'll read it, and then you can ask it to call somebody or text somebody. So all in all, I've been kind of happy with it. Surprisingly so. I mean, I never thought I would be, but yeah, I bought them and pretty happy with them. Yeah.
Now, are
I'm
you
fascinated by
connecting?
the.
Yeah.
Are
Are you
you?
connecting via Bluetooth, Steve?
Yeah.
Is that how you're okay? Because
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
sound really good. Like that
Yeah.
microphone is really good in there. And so you're connecting via Bluetooth to your iPhone as well. That's how it gets the text messages.
Yeah. That's
Interesting.
exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jeff.
It's
I,
funny because I was in one of the keynotes at Clio, and my phone rang, and I had these on, and I thought, "Oh crap, I'm disturbing everybody." So I'm madly punching at the, and then it dawned on me, nobody else could hear it ring because it was coming through the glass. I was like, "Oh, well."
that is
That's
interesting.
cool.
I'm fascinated by it because I'm a big fan of the Apple Vision Pro. You do not have a Vision Pro, is that
I do
right?
not.
Yeah.
No.
And the Vision Pro is amazing. It's frankly the most impressive technology that Apple has made in an incredibly long time, as far as I'm concerned. But it's also very high end and very futuristic. I mean, it's so
Mm-hmm.
expensive, and although it's fantastic for watching movies and for the things I do with it, it's tough to justify the expense. Unlike an iPhone, where you can justify getting it every year because it's so useful for a million different things. It's just, the way I justify it is it's a way to sort of experience the future. But what Apple is doing on the high end with this Vision OS, which is, I mean, just truly amazing what they've done with Vision OS operating system. I'm interested that it's what Meta, which I'll always think of as Facebook in my mind, are doing from the low end. They're sort of coming up from the bottom, whereas Apple, I think, is going to be coming down from the top. And eventually they will meet in the middle, because I do believe that we will have a future. I don't know how far away it is, 5 years, maybe even 10, I don't know. But we will have a future where people that wear glasses like me, it'll be fantastic that you wear glasses, because you'll want to have glasses, because your
Right.
glasses will be your AirPods, which is basically what yours are serving as right now, working as your AirPods. And your glasses will be able to see the world around you and interact with it and give you information. And this is the part that I don't know about, how it would superimpose in an augmented reality sense information that's relevant to the world around you. Meta, as you just said, their newest version does that by just having a tiny little screen in the corner. When I'm wearing my Vision Pro, it's interesting that, even though it's goggles that are coming up the world because of the cameras, I'm seeing the outside world just as if I am wearing glasses. But then I will bring up apps and windows and things like that. And it's getting to the point where it becomes natural. I mean, the best example I think of is it just showed up on the screen that you were showing a second, Brett. The newest version of the operating system for the Vision OS, where you can have widgets in place, and so I can take like a clock and I can put it
Right.
on my wall. And I actually get to the point where sometimes I'll be in my living room and I'll glance up on the wall to see the clock, and I'm like, oh no, there actually is no clock there. It's just I see a clock there whenever I'm wearing my Vision Pro, but I just get so used to it. So it is interesting to me how these worlds are coming together. I don't know if that's an interest of you, in the future, or maybe you're just trying out the latest technology. You've only had it a week, so it's all
Well,
brand new, but it's fascinating to
yeah.
me.
I was thinking as you were talking, the where we are with these meta glasses sort of suggests sort of where we were not that long ago with the AirPods.
Yeah,
Very convenient devices, inexpensive enough to for most people to buy, and now they have developed all these different capabilities. I said at the time I thought it was probably the most significant product that Apple had come out with since the iPhone, because of
Mm-hmm.
all its capabilities, and I wish that these glasses also had the hearing capabilities and hearing aid features that the AirPods do, because that would be a significant development, particularly for those of us who are old enough to begin having those kinds of issues. So I hope that they do that with these sooner or later. And I think it would be I would not be at all surprised if Apple didn't come out with some version of these kind of glasses that would incorporate the AirPods and capabilities and everything else. So
agreed. Yeah,
interesting future.
yeah, yeah.
That would be cool. That would be cool. Now, Steve, just real quick, because I got to round this out. I know you also have an Apple Watch.
I do.
You've been using, because you were like one of the first like lawyers that I saw that actually had a Watch Ultra, which was just really cool. And I think you keep upgrading that as well. You talked about the AirPods. Did you get the new AirPods Pro 3? You got
Yep.
those already? Okay, I figured that you would on that as well. And then I'm just going to assume you probably have an Apple TV back at the house. You
Yeah.
so most everything else that it sounds like, you're thick in the Apple ecosystem. But
Correct.
now I just love the fact that I didn't know that much, that you were experimenting a little bit more with the Android side, and now with the Meta glasses. And I just think that that's cool. Like you said, it just helps you to be a little bit more well-rounded, which is always
Yeah, and
neat.
it's like a lot of things in life. You can get married to a system to the extent that you don't see other things that are going on and other developments and other possibilities and kind of what's coming down the pike. And so, I'm as loyal an Apple supporter as you can find. But there are things that I wish it had or would do better, and all of
Yeah.
that sort of stuff. And so yeah, I've tried out. I've purchased and sold more technology products than I can remember.
That might be a good transition point, because one of the things that I really wanted to talk to you about, Steve, is AI. And I think of it particularly as a lawyer, and I want to talk to you about that. Although frankly, the stuff that we're looking at in the legal context, I think it's just as in its own way, it's coming out for people that are doctors or business people or everyone else. And you talk about, like, you sort of want to see the big picture of stuff. One of the things that I'm impressed about what you've been doing is you have been following so many of the companies that are bringing AI to law firms. Things like Harvey, which we use at some of the larger law firms, like where I work. Things like Clio, which is a little bit more medium to small firms. I know that there's a lot of other people. If we could start, I would love to sort of hear your take as of today, and where we are, late 2025, the promise and the peril of AI for lawyers. And then maybe we can sort of talk about what some of the different platforms are offering and where it goes from that. Because I think that I mean, I'll begin by saying that I'm prejudiced, that I think what it can do is amazing, and it is going to be transformative in my view. It already is starting to get there. And yet at the same time, it has a ton of dangers, not just the obvious ones like hallucinations, but it may lead us some of the path. And I know that one of your recent articles sort of talked about the need to stay analog. So yeah, why don't you start with sort of your general take on AI for lawyers, and go from there?
Yeah, sure. It's one of the keynote speakers at the Clio conference was Richard Susskind, who
Sure.
is thought of pretty reverently by most people, not all people. Some people say he's, a little simplistic. Um, but one of the things he he posed to the group was, how will businesses, individuals, organizations solve the problems that they have used lawyers for in the future? And his premise was that they're going to do it completely different because of the AI tools. Uh,
Mhm.
More self-help, for example, I think is on the horizon. I saw an article today where a person used ChatGPT to defend a landlord-tenant eviction successfully, a landlord-tenant eviction.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
so I think that is coming down the road. Um, Everybody, a lot of the people, particularly on the vendor side of things, like to say, well, it's not going to be that disruptive because there'll always be legal problems. There'll always be a need for lawyers to do the strategizing and visioning kinds of things that they're really good at. I don't agree with that.
Hmm.
Uh, Number one, not all lawyers are equally capable of strategizing and visioning. Some of us are better than others, and the ones that are not good are gonna lose out to the ones that are good. Number two, I don't think there's any question that the legal profession has been overbuilt. It's been overbuilt to service the leverage model that, let's face it, all of us have made a lot of money off of for the past, what, 30, 40, 50 years. Um, I think AI is going to destroy that model significantly. And in the destruction of it, it's going to eliminate a lot of the tasks that many of these uh, overly uh, many of these lawyers that we have used to satisfy the leverage model will no longer have
Mhm.
the opportunity to meet
Hmm.
their billable quotas by doing tasks that AI can now do. That's
Yeah.
going to have a significant disruptive effect. I'm not sure when, because you can never underestimate the power of lawyers to push back against technology, particularly when they start trimming their billable hours.
Right.
I think that's going to happen. Another real concern that I have is, and it's one that has not been terribly well addressed, is it's not just lawyers that will be affected, it's the entire legal sort of ecosystem. And that includes a lot of administrative type people, marketing type people, IT type people. We think, oh, well, they'll always have jobs. They're not going to have an IT person is not going to have a job when a bot can do it just as well. I mean, let's face it,
Hmm.
that's reality. And so some of the people who can least afford to be disrupted are the ones that are going to be hurt the most.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Just to jump off on that, I've talked, Steve, too, and this is not going to surprise you. I've talked to people that work, that are, computer programmers. They write programs, working for small companies, big companies. And they have said, years ago, you would hire people that were fresh out of college or whatever, and they would sort of start their career programming. And the field for computer science is already at the point where a first, second, third year computer programmer is not as good as the AIs are. And
Right.
so that is, is a company going to spend the money in hiring someone that's frankly not as good as what they can do with, Claude or whatever, whoever else they're going to, whatever AI system they're going to use. And it makes it tough to enter the field. But of course, the irony is you need to enter the field so that you can get good and gain that experience in the future. And so that is already disruptive. I don't think we're at the point where, law firms are not hiring a first year associate because the AI is better. And yet, these AI products that are being sold to law firms, they will purport to prepare first drafts of documents. Sometimes better than what a young lawyer could do, sometimes not. I mean, it's definitely disruptive. No question about that. It's changing everything. And it's getting to the point where you need to learn, to be a new lawyer today's world, you absolutely need to understand how to work with the AI so that you don't get replaced it. I'm not saying it's replacing it today. And yet at the same time, and we all know if we have medical problems, we self-diagnose through going to WebMD or those sorts of things. And so it won't surprise me that a lot of people will be resolving things through the law with the AI as they get more sophisticated. It's really interesting.
So yeah, it's what's the old joke? You have a hangnail and you ask ChatGPT and it says usually it's not anything serious. On occasion it can be, terminal cancer.
Of course.
Right.
But
Yeah.
everything you just said about the computer programmers, Jeff, I think you can just substitute the word young lawyers in there.
Yeah.
And it's been a real, I've been thinking about that a lot because there's this notion that senior lawyers are really good because they have gut instincts about things. And I've never been a real fan of the notion of gut instincts. I think what has happened when a senior lawyer has a gut instinct, it's because he or she looks at a problem and sees patterns in that problem that they have experienced before in their life through over and over and over and over again. So you say, oh, this is just like the case where I defended Jeff Richardson on this claim. It's not quite the
Hmm.
same, but it's got a lot of the same elements. So here's the strategy we can come up with. You can't, I'm concerned that younger lawyers can't get there if they immediately run to ChatGPT or even one of the closed systems and ask for the answer. It's so
Yeah.
seductive and it's so easy that I fear that they will not stop there and think through the response and the answer and whether it's right or whether it's wrong. I was at the AALL conference back in the summer that I'm not sure, Brett, if you go to. I think maybe you have in the past. Maybe you were there. I can't remember. But there was an interesting panel discussion from law librarians, and one of them was with a very large law firm. I can't remember the name of it. And she said, what she had noticed is the more experienced lawyers become acclimated to using the generative AI tools, they are so much better at it because number one, they're able to formulate the question after
Right.
critically thinking about the problem. So they have
The
a better
prompt.
question.
Hmm.
And then when they get the response, they're better at being able to say, this doesn't sound right. That part, that can't be right. And so she was saying
Interesting.
the problem that we
Yeah.
have is unless we have younger lawyers go through a lot of that training kind of experience over time, we're going to end up with, you know, people with minds full of mush if we're not careful.
Yeah.
Um,
And the issue on that is you talked about how seductive it is and how easy it is, but the other adjective that I worry about is, definitive, incorrectly so. Because when the AI, I know you've written about this before, so I know you know what I'm talking about. When the AI gives you an answer, it says it with 100% confidence, as if that is the answer. And then if you push back on it and say, well, actually, isn't the opposite true? It will oftentimes say, absolutely, that opposite is
right.
true. Thank you so much for pointing that out. And you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa! Like if I didn't know that that first answer was wrong, the thing that's been in the legal news a lot for the past, I guess maybe 2 years. That first one was the attorney, what was his name, Schwartz up in New York, who
Correct.
filed a brief that had cases in it that were made up, that were hallucinated by ChatGPT. I mean, that's the easy one. I mean, if you cite the case of Roe versus Wade, but there is no Roe versus Wade, that's sort of objective. We can easily see that case does not exist. It's a hallucination. But what worries me is when the AI purports to give you an analysis of here's how this should be done. And sometimes it's incredibly accurate and does it in 15, 30 seconds. And it's like, this is so helpful. And then other times it doesn't. I have a lot of AI systems that I will sometimes, give it a whole bunch of documents. And it would take me so long to go through these documents, needle in a haystack, to find what does it say about, this type of a clause in a contract. And the AI can, quickly go through and say, bang, 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 for these 100 documents, these 30 have that clause. But then you need to double check it, because it turns out that some of those 30 actually won't. And some of them that it doesn't say it has actually do. And so it's a trust but verify situation. And yet, as frustrating as that might make me, the reality is that, especially if I'm just looking for examples of clauses and contracts, it will give it to me so much faster than I could have found it, so much faster than I could have had a young associate at my firm
Right.
spend all these hours going through it. And it gets to, I mean, clients are not going to pay for some of these labor intensive tasks that, 10, 20 years ago, we would have young associates do, because they know that the AI can do it. Again, not 100%, but it can get so close and you can double check it. And that gets to the experience thing that you're talking about, that you have to understand what you're looking for to be able to check it.
Yeah, I think, when we talk about things like this, we also have to consider the fact that, the uh, human response to prompts often contains errors as well.
Sure, sure.
Don't want this to be the perfect to become the enemy of the good. But there are practical problems, and I've talked about this before, that people are very quick to blame lazy lawyering for not coming up with the hallucinations or inaccuracies, which are probably, the hallucinations are only the tip of the iceberg. I think the inaccuracies, the citing a case for a proposition which is not correct, it happens probably more frequently. But I was talking to a lawyer at a conference a conference of lawyers not long ago. We were talking about this very thing, and he said, I serve as local counsel in lots of cases, and if national counsel sends me a brief that needs to be filed in the next 30 minutes to meet the deadline, am I going to have to go through and once I sign the pleading, does that make me responsible for any hallucinations in what
Yeah.
is written? And even if I get the document a week in advance, if I go check all those hallucinations, the national counsel is probably going to say, I'm not going to pay you for that.
Right. Right.
So I think at some point, and I'm not sure when it will be, I think these systems are going to get to the point where they can become as trustworthy as humans can be. In other words, even before AI, when a national counsel sent a brief, there could be errors in it. But we accepted it sort of as a profession that, yeah, there could be errors,
Right.
but we're just going to go on with it. And I think at some point these systems will get close to that.
Mhm.
And that'll make them even more usable. And you make a very good point. Clients are going to demand, senior partners are going to demand. I mean, that I think I'd written a piece about what happens when a senior partner has these billing guidelines that preclude or at least disparage checking all the citations from a generative AI tool. He's not going to want the associate doing the research to check all those citations, because the associate won't get paid. We won't get paid for it. And
Mhm.
so, I mean, there's just a lot of abuses there that I think are pending over the horizon as pressures mount for clients, lawyers, businesses to force the service industry to rely more and more on these tools unless they get ready unless they're ready to tolerate certain inaccuracies.
Having gone to the Clio conference and other ones, I mean, do you have any being more positive about it, assuming that the lawyers are not going to lose their jobs quite yet, at least not maybe not this year. What are some of the things that you think are most, you don't have to identify specific vendors, but more of just like the types of tools. What are the things that you're seeing that there seems to be the most enthusiasm and optimism about how it could be helpful for lawyers?
Well, I mean, the thing that was introduced at Clio was the ability to marry uh, using AI inquiries both on internal data within a firm, which is where there's a vast repository of information, and external data, the cases and
Hmm.
sanctions and all of that, in a seamless sort of way. And I've said for a long time that that's sort of the holy grail, where you just ask an
Completely agree.
and it
Yeah.
gives you not only gives you answers from your stuff, but answers from the rest of the world. Um, and I think the Harvey and LexisNexis partnership was moving in that direction. The Clio acquisition of VLEX, I mean, I'm sure that was on their minds when they did that, because they ended up with a sophisticated AI tool and a ton of data. So, that's having that kind of ability, I think, it really makes these tools a lot more useful. Yeah, and I think we're going to see, we talk a lot about the access to justice or lack thereof, but I think we will see uh, people using these tools to solve their legal problems that they couldn't afford a lawyer to solve.
Yeah.
And I know that that's a hot topic, particularly with judges, because they get all, we don't want this pro se stuff in our courtroom and blah blah blah. But pro se stuff that's not 100% perfect is better than none, where these people just starve. And I think we can see a lot of uses for these tools, not only by those that are completely underprivileged and can't afford a lawyer, but those small businesses, startups, the woman that really desperately needs a divorce but can't afford a lawyer. I think these tools are going to enable lawyers to perform some of those services that they couldn't before because of cost pressure and cost prohibitions. Plaintiffs and contingency fee lawyers are another example. There are cases that contingency lawyers won't take because the amount of time they have to spend will not be justified by the reward at the end, the recovery. If you can constrain that time spent on the case, you can take more cases, and there's a theory and some data to support it that that's exactly what is happening in real world. Plaintiffs lawyers are taking more cases. What that means, of course, is that people that have been injured in some fashion that wouldn't be able to prosecute their claim and get a recovery will now be able to. And that's a good thing. So, yes, there could be disruptions, but there have been disruptions when Henry Ford rolled out the Model T. There was significant disruption at that point in time, but that we can't underestimate the disruption and change that will occur. We can't overestimate the benefits of it, because, I mean, let's face it, the world what we live in today was made possible by disruptions of all things, many, many, many things. And, that some people will suffer. Many of us will, in the long run, will say, I can't believe that there was a time that you had to go look stuff up in books and you had to drive to the office Saturdays and Sundays because you couldn't get it. Wasn't it crazy? But that's a lot better life where you don't have to do that, right? So, you have to keep all of it sort of in balance as you look at risks and benefits. It's easy to see some of the risks. It's not always easy to see some of the benefits.
So I've seen dystopian science fiction movies where there's some artificial intelligence, which is the adjudicator and the judge in a trial. And I always thought, well, what an interesting sci-fi idea. And here you are, the article that you wrote for Above the Law saying that AI arbitrators talk about this, and should I be scared?
Well, it stems from an announcement by AAA who is being pretty innovative in the entire AI space. And what they were proposing is that there would be, for a certain class of cases, I think more document intensive kind of maybe construction cases or something like that, that they would allow a bot to basically decide the case based on the pleadings and the information provided in the pleadings. The idea being that would save money and save time for everyone involved. And I think it's an interesting concept for some level and some types of matter. One of the examples that was pointed out to me by an in-house counsel for an insurance carrier was subrogation claims, where one carrier is subrogating against another. I mean, those things are rarely go to a jury anyway, and it's all pretty cut and dried. Either it's your fault or it's my fault, and my insurance company pays and yours does. The insured's already made whole or at least compensated, so there's no sort of individual sort of fear about it. It's just a business to business decision. And there are lots of cases like that. I mean, one general counsel said to me, I think she said, if I could have every case with exposures of $50,000 or less decided by an AI tool, I'd do it in a heartbeat. I spend more money on those cases than what they're worth. So you get some of them wrong. Big deal. We have used an AI bot for decisions with eBay for years and years and years. And there's an escape clause there. I mean, if you don't like the decision, you can have it kicked up to a human. Most people accept the decision. The thing I noticed over the practice of law for many, many years was most businesses can deal with exposures if they kind of know what they are. If they know that they're going to have to pay 50,000 or $50 million for a set of claims in the future, as long as they know and can get that resolved quickly, they can live with that. It's when uncertainty drags on and on and on and on, that just messes up their budget. It messes up the whole process. And so I can see how there'd be various places where having a kind of an AI decision making would be preferable. Now, of course, everybody immediately says, well, what about bias? And I'm like, again, this is, it's not let perfect be the enemy of good. If you look at the bias of our human judges,
right,
there's a lot. I mean, there was a study that said, a judge in some city, judges in certain cities would decide things and be more harsh on people the Monday after the football team lost. Local NFL team lost. I mean, there's all sorts of biases, and in many respects, we may have less bias with some of these things. I don't think it would be appropriate in cases involving really human kind of issues, where somebody like a significant mass tort or something like that, where emotions and having that sort of empathy with people becomes important. A lot of business disputes are not like that. They're completely different. They're just a business. It's just a business proposition. So it'd be interesting to see. As I think I wrote in the article, I've given several presentations to lawyers at retreats, and somebody always stands up and says, well, I'm a litigator and I'm not too worried about all this AI stuff because, the things that's so good about it, litigators is our gut instinct, our empathy for people, our persuasion, our ability to read body language, so on and so forth. With a lot of data that shows that's not really true. But be that as may, my response is usually, well, you may be right. I'm not saying that you are, but you may be right. But what you haven't taken into account is that the people deciding the dispute will no longer be humans. They'll be kind of a gasp goes throughout the room.
Yeah. I mean, just to close up this topic, I'll tell you, when I read this article, when I saw your title, I'm like, this is ridiculous. I mean, how could you possibly, that same AI that we were just talking about, how it has hallucinations and it says things that seem definitively to be X when it's actually the opposite of X that's true. And yet, number one, since they're, whenever I'm involved in a lawsuit, oftentimes when I lose, I feel like I should have won. And maybe that's true, maybe that's wrong. And, so judges are going to have to go one way or the other. Mistakes will be made. And the thing that you pointed out just now and that was in the article is like to a certain degree, for if you have a company, how much money are we going to spend to resolve this? Because you hate to spend $50,000 to litigate a $20,000 dispute. If you can get there's also something to be said for just finality. And I settle cases with my clients all the time where, I feel like we should have won the case. But the advantage of the settlement is oftentimes, what? We could do a lot worse than this, and now we can all move on.
Yeah,
And
right.
that's the part where, gosh, maybe with some degree for certain types of cases, if everybody agrees going into, we're going to spend just, a very minimal amount of money to have an AI arbitrated based upon the law. Hopefully they get it right, but at least we could all move on from it. It amazes me to say this, but this is perhaps not that crazy for certain types of cases, but it's bizarre to me to even think about it. So.
And, the other point to that is we may have AI not decide the entire dispute, but we may have AI decide motions like a motion to amend. We have all seen lawyers that even though everybody knows it's going to be granted, we'll still fight it, or motions for an extension, they'll still fight it. And so now we all have to file our motions, and we all have 15-page briefs all say the same thing because it's all been said a million times before. Then we have to wait until the judge gets around to saying, of course you can amend. What, are you crazy? And those kinds of discovery disputes. I can't tell you, and Jeff, as well as I, how many hours and days are spent arguing over stupid discovery disputes that most of the time how it's going to turn out, but you feel honor bound to do it. And they just eat up massive amounts of time. And having a bot say, you get the discovery, that's it. File your motions, and within 2 hours you'll have my ruling on it. I can see some value to that. I really can.
Well, Brett, I could sit here and talk about AI with forever. So let's move on to the next topic. You have some other things for us to talk about.
I do. You know what? Okay, so I'm going to go back to more fun stuff real quick because you're right. I would love to dig into more of the AI, and I talk to Steve quite a bit. And so I always enjoy hearing his feedback from some of the conferences that he goes to or that we're at together. And it's just really neat to see him write it out. But I'm going to point you right back, Steve. You did two articles not too long ago within the last month. That is the fun stuff. I love these. Some travel tips you may know by heart and some that you don't, because of course I know you do travel quite a bit. As people can hear, you go to several conferences, you do a lot of speaking engagements, and we always enjoy. Jeff and I have done several specials even when we've talked about our travel tips or our gadgets. Share a couple of here with us and with our audience that you particularly have enjoyed, or maybe you've heard other people appreciate the fact that you shared with them.
Yeah, this all stemmed out of a conversation I had going to the airport with a younger lawyer, and she was, and can you give me any travel tips? You've traveled so much, and so I was rattling them off, and she's busy writing them down. I thought, well, just write stuff. I can tell you that the tip that I've gotten the single most comment on, was the tip about when to go to the bathroom on the plane. And
wait a minute, I just read that. You just wrote about that. Yeah, here it is. Here it is. I see. That's good.
The thing that I was trying to say is, about 30 minutes out, the pilot's going to come out and say, we've begun our initial descent. Right. And when the pilot says that, either everybody rushes to the bathroom as quickly as they can, or nobody does because you can no longer get up. So I'm thinking, well, like if you know that 30-minute mark, like maybe 5 or 10 minutes before the 30-minute mark, if you just have to go to the bathroom, go. And then you can sit peacefully in your seat while everybody else is scrambling around or in
that's good.
Rest. So that's the one that I got the most.
Wait, you said also here, like, most people will try to hit the bathroom after the snack or drink service.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just try to plan maybe before that. Right. Sometimes if you don't time it just right, you're going to get stuck with the cart in the middle of the aisle, right? And you can't get around, and then you got to wait until it can be a mess. It's a mess.
Well, that may be your most useful tip. But what are some of the more tech-oriented tips that you have? Because I know that you have a bunch of those too.
The other one that I got some comments on was placement of your bags as you go through the TSA
Oh, yes.
checkpoint.
Yeah.
Because
There you
people
go.
fumble
Yeah.
with bags, but if you arrange them so your roller bag has got the handle closest to you, and your backpack has the straps where you can just pick it up, put it on, and then take the handle and pull out the other one and be gone. It's so much faster than trying to rearrange and fumble around and all of that. The other thing that I've discovered here lately is I used to get those compressed bags to roll stuff
Yeah.
in,
Oh,
and
yeah. The packing cubes, right? Is that
packing
the,
cubes.
yeah,
I
yeah.
found they never last very long, and after a few shots with them, they don't work very well anymore. So now I've gone to the actual cubes where you kind of roll it up and zip it up, and I think
Right.
those work better. But yeah, it's
Uh,
a lot of stuff.
in one of these real quick. Okay, so here I like this. You talked about an app that Jeff and I are both big fans of, Flighty. You
Mighty,
use
yeah,
the Flighty app quite a bit. You also use
absolutely.
TripIt in here. And then I like that I saw that you talked about card pointers. Now that's going more to like credit cards and like different offers and credit card points on there. But I actually just started using that app as well, that little
Good
service,
app.
and
Yeah,
that's
it's a good app
that's
to keep
that's
track
been
of your
really fun
points. Yeah,
as
and
well on that.
there's another one that keeps track of your awards. Maybe I can't remember the name of it. Your points.
Oh,
Or
did you have like a Ward tool or a Ward
yes,
wallet?
something like that.
Some of
Yeah,
those
a little bit better
on
than
there.
the Trip. It says that they do that, but I found out it's kind of clunky. I don't know they don't
Yeah.
get it together
Mhm.
as well as they could. I'm not sure that any of the automated ones do it as well as you just keep track of it yourself. But I don't know.
You got
One
a
pair of tips.
Kindle. Yeah, you
I was
got
gonna say
some air
one pair of tips
tags.
that you
That's
had in
good.
here was the flip side of the air tags. It's number one, try to never check your bag if you can avoid it, which I
Right.
agree with you on. But of
Right.
course, if you do have to, or even if it's on the plane, get those air tags in there so that you can track them afterwards. And I hear so many stories about people that are just so thrilled that they were able to find something that was lost, or
Oh,
not even it was
yes.
stolen, just even inadvertently sort of walked away with. But thank goodness for the air tags to help them find it again.
Yep. No, those are great tools. And yeah, I can't remember the last time I checked a bag. There's sometimes I've had to come close with putting, the swag from a conference or stuff in
Oh,
there.
yeah. You
And
got
so far I've managed to avoid that little debacle.
All right, last one. I feel like this is a kind of a weird full circle here, but I really enjoyed reading your article just from a few days ago now,
Yeah.
that you put this out. Going analog, is it just for Luddites? And it was just so neat to have you share a little bit in here, Steve, about what you mean by this. Number one, you reference a couple of books. You reference even David Sparks, who Jeff and I both talk about quite a bit and reference quite a bit, because as we all know, he's a big tech nerd, a
Right.
self-professed tech nerd on this, and even he talks about the need to go analog at sometimes. So can you just share a little bit here in closing as to why this was important for you to write about and just share a little bit?
Yeah, it kind of came out of a presentation by Kat Moon, who I know both of you guys know,
Right.
at Tech Show this year, I guess. Seems like it was last year. But one of the things she did with the audience is she passed out pencils and paper and said, we're going to do this exercise, and I want you to write things down because you remember it more. And I kept thinking about that. Of course, I had read the books, David Sachs' book about Revenge of the Analog, which came out several years ago. So I talked to Kat about it, and you saw in the article she's a proponent of that because people do remember more. And I've found, and I think it's consistent with what David Sparks had to say. If you write it down, it sort of helps you critically think about the problem. I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
saying write everything down, but just this morning started working on an article, and I sat down and just kind of jotted my notes, and I got little arrows going here and there. It really sort of helped me think through what it
Mm.
is I was actually trying to say a little bit more. And it's very easy, I think, to slip into the notion that we rely upon the digital world 100%. And I'm not sure that it's the best to always do that. I think there are places where you can use the analog world. In his book, David Sachs talks about listening to music. And an example I remember this when I was younger. I mean, the Rolling Stones came out with a new album. You waited and you waited and you waited, and it was released. Then you drove to the record store, you bought it, you brought it home, you put it on the turntable, you put the needle on the first song, and what did you then do? You listened to the entire album because
Yeah.
you're waiting for weeks to do it. And the thing that I always remember about that is on first hearing, you'd say, that's a terrible song. But then you'd listen to the album, 3 or 4 more times, and then you would say, that's actually a really good song.
Really good song. Yeah.
And the digital way of doing things is completely opposite. I mean, you just go on Spotify or Apple Music, go grab something, and you listen to one song, and you don't listen to the others. And a lot of times you sort of miss the whole experience about listening to music. It's not. I don't think it's intended to just be background noises to what else you're doing in the world. The musicians that create the music, they intend for it to be the experience itself.
Yeah.
Not just that's just backdrop. So yeah, I enjoyed writing that article. It was kind of fun. Of course, it is kind of, now that I'm looking at what you've got here, it's kind of ironic that the illustrations in the article come from ChatGPT.
Oh, of course they do.
I think it's
Analog,
great.
but you know.
I think it's great.
2 points that you just mentioned. First of all, when you talk about listening to the album, I have heard people saying that we need to appreciate the full album and stuff like that. And I do that. I noticed, I haven't tried it yet, but I've heard people talk about, there's an app on the App Store called Long Play. And what it specifically does is it's like a music playing app, but all it does is play albums. And you can go from one album to the second album to the third album, but it's sort of focused on just appreciating an album from beginning to end, because that's how the artist intended it. And I think that's actually sort of an interesting point. I haven't tried the app yet, but I do understand the idea. The other thing that you were talking about writing things down and, moving to the analog, I know for me, and you've heard me speak about this before, that, I very much agree that when you write something by hand, that is critical, because it forces you can't write word for word unless you're a court reporter that can transcribe everything. And so it's forcing your brain to sort of synthesize and understand and comprehend things, so that by the time your pencil hits paper and you write it down, you have already sort of internalized it in a way that you may need to never look at your notes again, but it's just in your brain. For me, however, although some people love to do that with paper, and I know that there is something about like a nice piece of paper and a nice pen and you can understand it, I just prefer to do that digitally on my iPad, because sometimes I do want to go back on those notes and see it. And for me, I use the Good Notes app, but I love the fact that if I need to see those notes that I took in a meeting with somebody, or maybe just scribbling down, strategy ideas for a lawsuit from 4 months ago, I can just, I'm a tap away from pulling them right up again. I don't have to go find that piece of paper and figure out what closet it's in or what file cabinet it's in. Everything's just right there with me. And then of course, it will do the OCR and the search. So if I needed to search for things from my notes, I can do it. So I sort of feel like I agree with this idea of analog, but do the analog in a digital way by using my Apple Pencil and my iPad to write things down. But I do hear where you're coming from.
I think that's fine. And it's interesting, as you were talking about it. So I was just, as you guys know, at the keynote of that wasn't just recent keynote, sorry, at the NetDocs conference. And I used a recording, as I usually do at things like that, a transcription device that records everything, transcribes it. But I also take notes. I use my laptop, not digital notes, but not with a pencil, but I actually take notes. And I've found most of the time, if I write an article about the conversation, I don't need to go back and read the transcript, because ideas are formulated on the notes and the key tenets and where I'm going. And so it was an interesting observation, Jeff, that you made. I think there's a lot to that.
Great stuff. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. It's been a lot of fun.
This has just been great. I told Jeff, I'm like, we're not going to have any issues talking about something, just because I know you, and it's just so many great topics that we're just interested in with both of the AI. And I just kind of like the fact that it came full circle around with the analog stuff on that. And yeah, really, really good.
Cool. Well, thank you for the articles that you write too. Tech Law Crossroads is fantastic. Yes. I love that you've been writing on Above the Law. These are fantastic sites. And please continue to share your insight and experiences with the rest of us, because it's really helpful. I don't always agree with what you say, but you always make me think, which is the most important part, is like, wow, I got to think about that, because that's an interesting point. So,
Well,
thank you very much.
Thanks for your kind words, and thanks for having me on my favorite podcast as a participant. I really appreciate it.
I think next time we got to come with our own Meta Ray-Bans, Jeff. This is now I'm convinced now, like that's going to be the next one. I've just been watching it, Steve, the whole time as he's been using it and taking pictures. It'll be fun. Well, thanks again for joining us, Steve, and thanks everyone for listening.
Thanks. Bye-bye, everybody.